Somewhere beneath the streets of Rome, archaeologists pulled back a layer of earth and found something that should not have been there. Not according to the official story Rome told about itself for 1,000 years. It was a throne room, predating the Republic, predating the great consuls and senators, predating the very foundation myth that every Roman schoolchild had memorized since childhood. And the moment it was uncovered, it forced historians to confront an uncomfortable truth. Rome did not just conquer lands, it conquered its own past.
For centuries, the Romans told one story about where they came from. It was clean, it was heroic, it was politically useful. The city was founded in 753 BC by Romulus, son of the war god Mars, nursed by a she-wolf and destined to rule the world. The Republic rose, the kings fell, and liberty was born. It was the kind of origin story that empires love, one that explains not just where you came from, but why you deserve to be in charge. But underneath that polished legend was a messier, more human, and far more fascinating reality. And the physical evidence, the buried walls, the royal artifacts, the archaeological layers that Rome tried very hard to simply move past, has slowly, stubbornly refused to stay hidden.
The kings Rome wanted to forget. The official Roman tradition acknowledged 7 kings who ruled before the Republic was established in 509 BC, but the way Rome remembered these kings was carefully managed. The last 3, Tarquinius Priscus, Servius Tullius, and Tarquinius Superbus, were Etruscan. And Rome, which would spend centuries defining itself against foreign rule and barbarian chaos, was deeply uncomfortable with the fact that it had once been governed by men from the north. Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud, was cast as the villain who drove the Romans to revolution. His tyranny, the story went, was so extreme that the people rose up and abolished the monarchy forever. The Republic, in Roman imagination, was not just a political system. It was a moral achievement, a liberation. But here is where the ground, literally, tells a different story.
What the earth remembered. In 1899, archaeologist Giacomo Boni began excavating the Roman Forum, the civic heart of Rome that had been buried and rebuilt so many times that digging into it was like reading a book written in reverse. What he found beneath centuries of marble and imperial grandeur was startling. Traces of the Regia, one of the oldest structures in Rome, alongside artifacts that pointed to an active, sophisticated royal court operating long before Roman tradition wanted to admit.
The Regia, literally the king's house, sat at the edge of the Forum. Roman tradition claimed it was the house of Numa Pompilius, the second king, and that it had been repurposed as a priestly administrative building after the kings were expelled. What the excavations revealed, however, was that this structure was not a relic of a primitive past. It had been built and rebuilt multiple times, each time becoming more elaborate. Among the most extraordinary finds was a black stone, the Lapis Niger, discovered in 1899 beneath the Forum pavement. Beneath it lay an archaic Latin inscription, one of the oldest ever found, dating to approximately the 6th century BC. The inscription, fragmentary and damaged, contained a word that sent scholars scrambling, a reference to a king. Not a symbolic king, not a mythological figure, a real administrative authority. Rome had paved over the evidence. Literally. The black stone had been sealed beneath volcanic tufa blocks and later marble, treated by later Romans as a sacred but deliberately obscured site. Ancient sources called it a place of ill omen, connected to the death of Romulus. But what it actually represented was a memory of royal power that the Republic found deeply inconvenient.
The engineered legend. The Romans were not naive about what they were doing. The great Roman historian Livy
writing in the 1st century BC, admitted in his own preface that he could not verify the early history of Rome. The records, he wrote, had been largely destroyed when the Gauls sacked the city in 390 BC. What remained was a mixture of priestly records, family traditions, and oral memory, all of which had been heavily shaped by the political needs of the Republic and, later, the Empire. This matters enormously, because the destruction of Rome's records by the Gauls was not just a historical tragedy, it was also a historical opportunity. It gave subsequent generations the ability to reconstruct the past with enormous flexibility. And reconstruct they did.
The Aeneid, written by Virgil at the direct encouragement of Emperor Augustus, traced Rome's founding not just to Romulus, but all the way back to Aeneas, the Trojan hero. This was not idle mythology. Augustus was engaged in a massive project of political legitimation, and connecting Rome to Troy and himself to Aeneas, and therefore to the goddess Venus, was a calculated move. It made Rome's dominance feel cosmically inevitable. It made Augustus feel divinely ordained. But every layer of engineered legend the Romans added pushed the underlying truth further from view.
The evidence that keeps returning. Modern archaeology has continued to challenge the tidy narrative. Excavations on the Palatine Hill, the hill where Romans claimed Romulus founded the city, have uncovered hut foundations dating to the 9th and 8th centuries BC, consistent with the traditional founding date. But they have also revealed something more. The site shows continuous occupation and increasing sophistication through the period of the kings, right up to the early Republic. There is no dramatic break in the material culture, no sudden change suggesting a revolution that reshaped society. What changed was not the city. What changed was the story told about the city.
Etruscan artifacts found in Rome from the 6th and 7th centuries BC reveal the extent of cultural and political exchange. The Romans absorbed Etruscan religious practices, architectural techniques, and political institutions so thoroughly that the boundary between Roman and Etruscan in this period is almost meaningless. Yet Roman tradition systematically minimized this debt, casting the Etruscan kings as foreign oppressors rather than cultural contributors, because admitting otherwise would have complicated the founding narrative Rome needed.
Empires are built twice, once in stone and blood, and once in story. Rome was extraordinarily skilled at both. But stone, unlike story, does not negotiate. It does not forget. And the evidence beneath Rome's feet has been quietly waiting for 2,000 years to tell its own version of events. The empire that rewrote its own origin built its legend on top of its truth. And the truth has never stopped pushing back up through the ground.